Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Regroup Show. I am your host, LJ Walker. Well, one of the subscribers came to me and wanted me to talk about the fact that two of Bill Cosby's homes in New York City have been foreclosed on. This actually happened last month. Okay. As many of you know, Bill Cosby, famous comedian, actor, producer, entertainer, one of the highest paid entertainers for a very long time, had faced a lot of allegations, troubles when it came to sexual assault. He was first found guilty and was given a 10-year sentence. However, he only served 3 of those years, and he did have many of those rulings overturned. Okay? So here's the thing about these two homes. These two homes were both bought in the 1980s. One was for his son who died, and the other was for his wife, Camille's mother. I believe she may have passed also because Cosby is 87 years old, and I know that Camille is about the same age as well. So the question arises is this. These properties are a little over 40 years. Aren't most mortgages, or all mortgages rather, 30 years? So that was the question that I saw in one of the comments for Gray Hair Diva. I listen to her from time to time. All right, so here's the thing. There are actually 40-year mortgages. I have seen them. All banks don't have them, but they do exist. However, I don't think that this is the situation here. All right, there are several different reasons why after 40 some odd years they're still paying a mortgage. And by the way, it wasn't just the mortgage that they're behind on. It also indicated that they were $300,000 in back taxes. And New York City definitely does not play that. Okay, so what happens is this. A lot of times people, they refinance their houses. They do that in order to get a lower interest rate. Okay. And in getting that lower interest rate, what happens is that a lot of times when you refinance, that resets the mortgage clock, and it can add to the principal of your mortgage as well. Not always, but many times, yes, that is the case. The next thing that could have happened is that he could have tapped into the equity of his own home and borrowed against it. So for those of you who don't know what equity is the difference between the market value of the property and the amount owed on any mortgage or loans secured by that property. So let me give you an example. Let's say you bought a home for $200,000 and you have a mortgage that's $20,000. And you bought this home 20 years ago. Today, that home is worth $2 million. So the equity would be the $2 million, which is the current value, minus the $20,000, which is owed. You see, in many areas, especially New York City, what you pay for your home, it's normally going to increase in value. It normally does not stay the same. It normally does not drop. It has in the past, but even when it drops, it doesn't drop by that much. Okay, so he might have done an equity. Now, there's different ways to do equity. you can do what is known as a cash out refi, which is basically an additional balance is on the original loan, and you get a lump sum of cash. It replaces the old loan with the new one at a lower interest rate. Okay. The next thing that people do when they want to get equity from their home is they get a home equity loan. A home equity loan is actually a second mortgage. The rates a lot of times are higher than a cash out refi. Okay. And then the last way is through a HELOC. Now I'm noticing a lot of banks are cutting down or cutting out HELOCs altogether. HELOC is kind of like a credit card for your equity. And basically it adds 5 to 10 years with variable interest rates. And it's for someone who wants ongoing access to cash. So those are basically the 3 ways in which you can pull equity from your home. What do people use that equity for? Well, number one, they use it for college expenses. And we know that all of his kids, from my understanding, they went to college. So he probably did that. Next, medical costs. We all know that he's blind right now. So he probably also pulled out the equity for the medical costs. And then, of course, the legal battles that he went through, he probably also pulled out the equity to pay for that. Now, I did hear that as far as the homes in Los Angeles he used to have, he sold those in order to pay for the trials that he was going through with the sexual assault allegations. Okay? So, that right there is what you have. And then yes, you can also use it for other things, like sometimes people also use equity to buy property, to buy more property, or to go into some other form of investment. Okay? So that is probably why instead of the loan being 30 years, the loan is 40 years. Or he might have had a second mortgage on the property. So that's why even though he bought it in 1980, he's still paying for the property. Okay. Some people also, they like to do this, especially wealthy people. They love keeping a mortgage on their home because they see it as a tax advantage. They see it as keeping their assets liquid. They see it as a way to maintain credit lines as well. So that's another reason. Now, in addition to all of that, the other question that came to my mind is, why does he have so much property? You know, at his age, I'm thinking he shouldn't want to be bothered with all that responsibility. My mother is going to be 80. And actually, honestly, when she had turned 70, she was like, ugh. She got herself a financial planner to handle most of her finances. And then a lot of times she comes to me with stuff. She's not really, you know, and as I shared with you guys as well, the houses in Florida, those were sold. So that's why I'm kind of saying to myself, darn, 87 and he's blind and he has all these properties. Okay, because see, besides the Los Angeles ones that he sold, which I was like, okay, cool. And then these New York homes that are foreclosed on, he has Connecticut, he has Massachusetts, and then he has Pennsylvania. And I'm like, huh? You know, so I said to myself, well, you know, he probably kept all these houses. Maybe it's, you know, estate planning strategy, generational wealth, because he does have 3 daughters that are still alive. So maybe, and, you know, they have grandchildren. He has grandchildren too now. So it's possible that they will inherit these properties, right? But I had to be, I still was kind of curious Why Connecticut? See, I understand Los Angeles and New York. Those two are like the entertainment capitals of the world, in addition to Vegas and Tennessee, right? But more so New York and LA, because that's where the work is. Now, Pennsylvania, I understand, because that's where he's from. Massachusetts, I understand, because they have the best medical care in the United States, if not the world. Well, no, not the world. They have the best in the United States. Let me not go too far. Okay. But Connecticut, I'm like, why there? So I have to admit, I cheated and I went on AI to find out why he wanted to keep, or why would anybody want to keep a Connecticut home, especially if they have homes in New York. Connecticut is not that far from New York, but still, you know what I mean? They don't really have, in my opinion, I mean, they have things to do, but they don't have as much going on when I compare it to the other states and the other places. No offense to those of you who are from that state. But anyway, I did learn something. Connecticut has some of the best asset protection laws in the United States. And asset protection is definitely something that he needed, especially after all of those cases came against him. Connecticut also has laws for homestead, meaning that creditors will have a more difficult time seizing primary residences or any kind of residence compared to other states. The laws favor homeowners more than lenders. That's not to say that you won't be foreclosed on in that state, because it can be done. It just takes a lot longer to do, and it's a lot more complicated to do than in other states. So for those of you who are interested in mortgage notes, you might want to rethink getting something in Connecticut. Just saying. Okay. The other thing is, Connecticut has some beautiful tax benefits. They don't tax Social Security income. Okay. They also have a property tax relief for seniors 65 and older. So he's 87, fits perfectly. They also have a tax exemption for disabled individuals. He's blind. He's disabled. He's getting that tax exemption. Okay. So that is probably why he's going to keep, or try as best as he can to keep, that Connecticut property. Now, let's go back to New York. All right. So even though it's put up for foreclosure, typically there's a redemption period. And New York redemption period is pretty long. Okay. So normally, I think it's a year. I didn't look it up. I should have looked it up before doing the video, but it's either a year or 3 years that you have to pay off the mortgage and then the taxes. Okay. So he does have time to shut that down. What if he doesn't pay at all? So here's how it goes. The bank is going to pay the taxes so that they don't lose the profit, so that they don't lose their investment. So they are going to pay that $300,000 off so that the government won't take it. Then what they're going to do is, banks normally don't like real estate like that. So they'll turn around and they'll sell that property. If they sell that property within a year, then they get to keep whatever is owed on the property, but the rest of the money has to go back to Bill. That's how that works. I know for a fact, unfortunately, that is definitely how that works. But here's another thing. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people who get foreclosed on, they don't know that they are entitled to that money. It's almost like overages, tax overages. They don't know it. And if they don't say anything to the bank, a lot of times the bank keeps all of that money and does not give it to the person. So if you don't approach the bank and you don't tell them, then or if they act stupid, then you would have to get a lawyer. And I believe it's civil court. In the other state where I'm doing this thing in, it's civil court. The person you'd have to take them to civil court and they would have to sue. And I believe it's called restitution, if I'm not mistaken. But you know how these states are, each state has like a different name for the same thing or whatever. But basically, that's how that works. So you could say in a way, he won, whether he pays it off or he doesn't pay it off. He probably still won because I know that property, I know where that property is located. I passed by it not knowing that he owned it. That area is Billionaires Row. So he gonna make a whole lot of money on it. But here's the other thing that I don't understand too is I'm thinking, he has 3 daughters, he has a wife. I'm pretty sure he has like a conservator or a financial planner or somebody. And it's like, how could they let this happen? You know what I mean? Like, somebody should say, hey, Dad, what are we going to do? Before this happened. You understand me? So if I was his daughter or if I was his wife, we would be having a conversation for real. I'd be like, honey, they're about to foreclose on the home. How are we going to pay for this? Why don't we sell it? Why don't, a whole bunch of things. That's another thing too. He could have sold it so that it wouldn't go into foreclosure and then just pay the bank the money that is owed to them and then keep the rest for himself. Right? Because the property is probably still in his name, or maybe it's in an LLC. Either way, as a wife, I would have said something to him. Or, say something to the people who are handling their finances. You understand me? So, yeah, this is something, it's a lot. In my opinion, this is a lot to handle for someone who's a senior citizen. And man, I hope things work out for all who are involved. I think that this is very sad. This is very sad. So guys, let me know in the comments what you think. I hope you learned from what I've shared with you, but how would you handle something like this? Have you ever had to deal with an aging parent whose home was about to be foreclosed on or did get foreclosed on? What was your experience? I would really like to know. And how did were you able to triumph over it, etc., etc.? All right, guys. So remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. Until next time, have a good night.